This is Andy Crouch from All About Beer. I wanted to take a moment to thank Dust Bowl Brewing for becoming our latest underwriter. With a spirit born decades ago in Oklahoma, the Central California brewery started with Hops of Wrath IPA and grew into an award-winning regional brewery with 4 locations. The folks at Dust Bowl appreciate the importance of supporting beer journalism, and their financial support helps us pay our writers, illustrators, and photographers. Learn how you can affordably support journalists by visiting allaboutbeer.com/support.
Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Holl. As the summer season heats up, I'm going to talk with one Pennsylvania brewer about how they're embracing outdoor space, an active kitchen, and brewing beers that bring people in for a good time. But 2 quick programming notes. The first is, if you're going to be in the Boston area this weekend on Saturday, June 6th, make sure you're going to Forever Lager at Notch Brewing Company. You can go to their website to learn more about the great lineup and the beers that are going to be served. And All About Beer will be there doing some panels during the shows, talking about smart lager things with smart lager people. Also, All About Beer is happy to once again be participating in the Black Fly Beer Camp at Great Camp Sagamore in the Adirondack Mountains of New York from June 26th to 28th. You can join me and a group of fantastic brewers for a weekend of great beer in a beautiful setting. Plus, Nate Schweber playing live. Spots are limited, and you can reserve your spot now by visiting sagamore.org. As you know, and I've been talking about this in the show for a while, and Andy is at the cold open of every episode, but the way we're able to keep bringing original content to the beer industry and curious beer drinkers is through your support. We have created an affordable underwriting program that is easy on your budget, helps you get visibility, and is an altruistic way to directly fund writers, photographers, and editors. Please visit allaboutbeer.com/support to learn more. When you're at our website, poke around a bit. You can read the recent articles, go back through the archives, and tune into other podcasts like One Iconic Beer, which is hosted by Jeff Allworth, the Brewer to Brewer podcast, and the All About Beer podcast that's hosted by Don Tess and M. Souter. Follow us on social media at All About Beer to keep up with everything else we have going on. We'll get into the show in just a moment, but first, this episode is brought to you by Barrel One Collective, and I'm joined by Dan Canary. He's the president and co-founder of Barrel One, and also the co-founder of Harpoon Brewery, which celebrates 40 years this year. Barrel One is a collection of breweries and beverage brands, chief among them Harpoon, and they are a sponsor of this episode. So, Dan, 40 years in craft beer puts you in rarefied air these days. How does that feel in the grand scheme of things?
You know, it's pretty amazing. You don't take a lot of time to step back and really think about it, but when I do, it fills me with a great deal of pride, not for myself, but really what we have collectively here at Harpoon/Barrel One, and as an industry, what we have done, kind of out of creating a whole cloth new industry here that didn't exist. So it's a wonderful and very, very gratifying feeling, John.
I like that. When you look back, I mean, there's huge accomplishments. There's a lot learned. Are there a few things that you're really proud of that when you have taken those moments to sit back where you're like, yeah, we did that?
Yeah. And the big word for me is the P word, perseverance. I guess, when you run a business for 40 years, you go through a lot of different cycles, right? And we've had our ups and our downs, the battles we faced in our first 5 years, like hand-to-hand combat with Jim Cook and Sam Adams and others and the big guys, and educating consumers really one-on-one about what this micro beer was all about. To the last 10 years, when it's 5 to 10,000 breweries and stores are so crowded, and, kind of keeping your head about you and focusing on the bigger picture of what you're trying to accomplish. So perseverance through a lot of different challenges would be the one thing. And the other would be the people, like the amazing people that we've had here at Harpoon/Barrel One that I've gotten to know in the industry. There was a period in the 90s where you basically knew everybody in the business coast to coast.
Yeah.
Kind of a small club. So there's just been an awful lot of that. And we have, as I think, from over the years, we did our European beer culture trips for 25 years, taking people to Europe. So, I've probably visited I don't know, somewhere between 300 and 500 breweries anyway in my life, and half split between probably the US and Europe. And just meeting an amazing collection of people in this wonderful industry. Because, at the end of the day, beer is by far and away the most social beverage out there. It brings people together. When you can make a career in this business, you meet an awful lot of really great people who enjoy being with other people. So I feel very fortunate.
I like that. Quickly, just because it is the 40th for Harpoon, I can't help but think of IPA. Give us the endorsement as to why we should have a Harpoon IPA in our glass as soon as humanly possible.
Yeah, it's when I think back to the stories, my partner Rich Doyle and Todd Mott and Al Marzi, coming up with different new styles to try. And we had seasonal beers have always been a really big deal here in New England. I think, they've been big every place, but we skewed, more higher here, maybe because our weather's so extreme. But it was a summer seasonal in 1993, and I remember sampling it with people, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it is so bitter." But then, over time, quickly, people's palates started to adjust, and our original product had been Harpoon Ale, which is a lovely, mild kind of English ale, and which we're bringing back in a limited edition this month for the 40th. But people's taste palates really moved, and all of a sudden, by the next year, it's like, you've got to bring this back year round. We did, and it took off and went on a 25-year run, basically, and it became our flagship really quickly. It is a lovely, balanced beer. We were the first IPA east of the Pacific Northwest that we know in craft at the time, and we were inspired by a lot of brewers in Pacific Northwest. And what we did is we took the English recipes, if you will, and we updated them with all American ingredients. And that is the background of and backbone of Harpoon IPA. So this is not a hop bomb. This is not a haze bomb. This is kind of more true to the original recipes and styles of IPAs, and it is a beautifully balanced beer, but elevated, almost like you blow up a balloon. The malt bill is bigger, the hop bill is bigger, but at the end of the day is a beautifully balanced, very, very drinkable product, and it still is. It's my go-to. I sample a lot of our different things, as you can imagine, and cycle in and out of things, but Harpoon IPA, every time I can get it, I'm excited to have it.
Dan, you're going to be back at the bottom of the show to talk more about the Harpoon 40th anniversary. We're thankful for the company's support in sponsoring this episode, and you can get the latest on the brewery, including 40th anniversary celebrations, by visiting harpoonbrewery.com. At the recent Craft Brewers Conference in Philadelphia, I ran into Jason Ufema, the co-founder of Shy Bear Brewing in Pennsylvania. He wanted to dissect the correlations between success rates for breweries in urban areas that are walkable by consumers and truly beer-based versus the rural area ones, like his spot in Lewiston, which is about 60 miles north of Harrisburg, which pushes them to be not only a brewery that makes great beer, but also be an event venue and a restaurant. Being in Philadelphia, he told me, and spending time at Human Robot and Love City and Yards and others reminded him of the difference between the city breweries and ones like his. There are similarities, of course, but there's a lot of differences. And what he's learned over the years of being open is something we can all benefit from hearing. Here's our conversation. Jason, thanks. When you look back on what you wanted Shy Bear to be, like when it was in the planning stages, what was it then, and where does it square with what it is now?
Well, that's a loaded question for sure, but I would say when we originally were planning on doing Shy Bear around 2011, 2012, that was the when it really felt like things were changing in the landscape, at least for central Pennsylvania, mainly more because of the outskirts of Harrisburg being so developed at that point, that it felt like it was close enough to being a reality. But in truth, we felt that the socioeconomic side of it and paying what people would pay for a pint of beer just wasn't quite there yet. And so when we put the first money towards everything, it was a roaster that we sold to make room for it in the coffee, because my family's in the coffee business originally. And when we made those first investments, everything was very exciting and everything was moving forward, and craft beer was still at the pinnacle of. I mean, I would say 2016 was probably the height. We were really starting at the very top of the mountain. So where it is now, to answer your question, I would say that the experiential side of it still tests us today to be able to make those decisions and be a little bit more thoughtful about the experience side of beer. And we have really seen that the culture of it has blossomed for our area, and we're still the only neighborhood brewery for our immediate area. So there's still a niche, but it's certainly not the ubiquitous, all-encompassing, culture-driven thing that it once was.
Yeah. I mean, it is crazy to look back on just how things have evolved over time,
Yeah.
and how quickly they moved as well over time.
Mhm.
Do you feel like you've hit the stride that you're comfortable with now?
I do. Um,
And what and like,
yeah.
how do you explain that to folks? Like what that is?
The hardest part I would say about what we do is exactly what I don't want to do, but at the same time, I feel like I have to do, which is that I have to be more of a glorified event planner and event stager and constantly think about weird ways of getting people here. Um, and it's not, we have a very strong local loyal following. We also have a very diverse regional following. When I say regional, I'm saying to north central Pennsylvania, to the Lancaster Valley. I mean, like 100-mile radius type of influence. I think that we've developed that based on the idea that we're hitting on the food, the drink, the ambiance, um, the environment in the right way, and then fold in the entertainment when we can. We're very live music driven, but I definitely have seen a lot that's changed in the demographics of music, of younger people going out for live music versus people who are in their 40s to 70s. That's still a very big thing for that demographic. It's not a big thing for the 20 to 30 somethings.
Interesting.
Um, yeah. And I would say that that's generally, I mean, unless you're talking about, it goes back to experience. I think if you go to a concert and the pyrotechnics and the lights and the whole thing is an experience, you're grabbing the younger generation. It's something that it's a wow factor. For the music just to be the music, I think that is something that people can almost consume anywhere. They don't necessarily have to see it live to see that. I mean, you could hear and see a virtuoso on reels. You know, you don't necessarily need to
Sure.
see them live to do it. Yeah, so it's that part is challenging of exactly how much live music to other things, but the trivia and theming trivia is definitely part of it. Music bingo, stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of cheesy in its concept, but I think how you do it, how you interact with the customers when you do it, because I MC most of these things. We have a few guest trivia people that do a very good job of it, but um, it's a when you look at the granular parts to entertainment, I think being as wide in variety of what you're grabbing from their attention, and also people who still want to be social. Live music sometimes doesn't afford the ability for conversation to sometimes still exist, and a convivial type of life that goes on with that. So we've just learned a little bit more in our time what to do and what not to do with live music.
I mean, it also strikes me as you figured out what works for you, and you're not going to be everything to everybody. And
Correct.
I think the larger craft world, I think, was trying to be that for a while. And, the sooner you realize you can't, the easier life gets, and then obviously harder in other ways as well. Um, what do you feel like you've settled into, or settled's not the right word, but like, who's coming to the brewery these days?
It's still a very large family-oriented option, and we do because we are located between State College and Harrisburg. I think you're talking about professionals and families who are meeting in the middle. Maybe people who are maybe coming from different parts of the state, and they say, "Hey, we should meet at Shy Bear." It's like directly in the middle of us. Actually, we have a little slogan that we've always used, which is in the middle of everywhere instead of saying we're in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of glass half full concept, but it is the truth. And we're 3 hours from New York City, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, DC. And to have that proximity to those four major markets is obviously a very advantageous thing to have because of the travel. But internally, we are a old steel town that hasn't necessarily evolved into the 21st century. Um, but to answer your question, I think that what we would love to say, and what we would love to do, and be able to be a beer first thing. But I don't know if that can exist in this microclimate of where we are. I don't, and I'm sometimes happy about that. It's almost diversification in spite of ourselves. If we were specifically beer focused, and when beer evolves and changes and morphs in front of your eyes, almost feeling sometimes overnight, you don't want it to be your driver for if it's out of style or if it's a la mode.
Yeah.
It's that moment where you can say, well, I have so many different tentacles. I equate it to roots in the ground, and sometimes you're searching for more water, and sometimes you go in a particular direction and it's dry, but you still have other roots going somewhere else that is still cultivating something new. And in our side, it's definitely the non-alcoholic side, has definitely been a driver, but not to the point where that's where we are trying to focus our strengths, or trying to say we're going to be the next great non-alcoholic brand, because that would be silly in this day and age of people of the Coca-Cola and Pepsi range, who will buy up little pesky brands just because of the scale. You can't even come close to compete at the scale of any of this stuff, and no one would ever want to pretend to be doing that. So my role, I think, is with the branding, finding the niche that hits for somebody who can't find a particular type of product for what we do, and focus on that, whether that is non-alcoholic, beer driven, sparkling refresher, alcohol driven but not grain, and still focus our beer program for contemporary, interesting styles.
I want to go back a couple of points that you made, just because it's interesting, where I was thinking about, like, the late 90s, when we were seeing the rise of brew pubs, and it was critically important that the brew pub had a good burger, or had good fish and chips, or had good, just really good food coming out of the kitchen. And then you'd introduce people to the beer through that, because people weren't necessarily walking through the door for beer. And in some ways, as you were explaining that, like, the entertainment part, the music part, sounds like that's in a way what you're leading with to get people through. And then you have the diversity of your beer list to make them stay for a while and then hopefully come back again. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's 100% fair. I think also food, I would put our food
Yeah,
at a reasonable. I would say it's truly the foundation for which these other things can occur. I realized at a very early time, but also in my history of working in the food and beverage outside, indirectly from the family's coffee business, but also before I did this, I worked in fine dining, fast casual, um, and at other breweries in the past. So I've seen so many different things that have led me to the idea that food is the driver, whether or not you're even eating. I think it's more of a subconscious thing that, well, we can all agree on going to Shy Bear because it will have X, Y, and Z, because I know grandma, likes fish and chips, and I know that my cousin is a vegan, and I know and by being able to somewhat be accommodating from a food perspective, the beer, the entertainment, and all of everything else can occur because of it. Um, on top of the fact that I know that they're drinking more than if I didn't have food, and I
sure.
know that if I'm just having a food truck and having to rely on on them, and they are only going to show up if it's busy enough, and then you're also vetting food trucks, and I didn't want to go down that route. I wanted to be in control of the pricing. I wanted to be in control of the quality, and but I still believe that these other things are. Some people come here who are specifically coming for the beer. Some people are coming specifically for the entertainment. Some people are coming specifically for the food.
How closely are you watching? Let's start with the kitchen, like what moves and what doesn't, and how are you responding to that? And then,
Yeah.
same thing with entertainment, with live music as well. But start with the kitchen because I think folks are really looking at food programs these days.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to be confused by someone seeking a Michelin star or James Beard Foundation
Oh, sure.
designation. However, everything that we do is as much scratch made as we can within the confines of storage and space and throughput. So we're a little bit more. Our food program tends to be a little bit more curated in the winter when we're not as busy and we don't have as many covers to worry about. And then we do get a little bit beachier, a little bit more taco driven, flatbread driven in the summer where we're not looking for as much, not as many composed dishes or anything of that nature. We can basically get things a little bit more on I would call it, a fancy assembly line type of food cooking, where you're not having to think too much about it. You're just going for volume. That in so many ways, that is what we strive to do. Of course, for Mother's Day and Father's Day, 4th of July events where we know we have to be a little bit more thoughtful on specials, we are. We do plenty of that where that is we're focusing on better proteins, on more composed dishes. That's where we'll veer a little bit on the food side.
That makes sense. And then, so obviously if things work, they stay on. If they don't work, they don't.
Yeah.
Live music, I think, is more difficult.
Yes.
So how have you managed that? I mean, we're unofficially in summer. It's just past Memorial Day weekend. You guys have a great outdoor space. I was looking at the calendar today. There's a lot of live music that's on there. I know folks struggle with that where it's, are we going to get regular bands coming through, and do they have a following, or, is this going to be somebody where, somebody walks in and they didn't know there was live music? Are they going to stick around? Like, what have you found works for maintaining that balance?
Well, I'm fortunate enough, I guess, to say that being a musician myself and my band's playing, I'm in two different bands that play here often. And part of that is I've taught myself and learned and watched and have taken lessons online of music mixing. So I would say to anybody who's thinking about it or wants to get into having more live entertainment, not just bands, but any type of thing that requires understanding how the audio, video, and visual side of what you can control on your own. Not only do you not have to pay somebody else to do it, but the other side of it is that you can be in control of the volume of everything that you do. I as a drummer myself, I will walk into a particular bar, and if I see a live drummer with an acoustic kit setting up in a space that I could tell that the acoustics cannot handle it, I mean, I'm looking for the check. And I hate to say it because I want to support live music, but I cannot stand being in a place that isn't accommodating to live music. I mean, you can't just do it just because you want to. There has to be some sort of forethought and pre-commitment to doing it and doing it right. So that's the main thing. Is I book every band. I vet them to the point where I know that I'm getting diversity, but I know that I'm also not going to veer too far into styles or culturally specific things that I don't want to also isolate and say, well, I'm not going to Shy Bear because I don't like something of a particular. I am somewhat very specific to classic styles and cover bands and everything like that, because it is just, I'm here to fill seats. I'm not here to create a cultural void that doesn't exist. Like I'll be honest. I'm here to create something that I think for my demographic is what they want. And I don't feel bad about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that authenticity and that understanding of place ultimately translates.
Yeah.
I think to folks coming through. So then let's talk about the beer. And it's a fairly diverse tap list. And I enjoy that because different days, different moods, different foods, different different beers. Sometimes you want to stay for another one, and so you look for lower ABV. Sometimes, somebody else is the DD, so you look for higher. You have a pretty, like I said, diverse list. How have you gone about curating that to get it to where you want it now?
Well, I think the idea of IPAs being what keeps the lights on is still the case today. And I hate to say it, and listening to some of
don't,
your,
I mean, yeah.
So, but I mean this in a sincere way, because I know a lot of your past guests and even the last one that you had with the brewer from Yazoo.
Brandon. Yeah,
Brandon, talking about hazy IPAs, and I heard that. And I listened to that, and I kind of feel a 180-degree difference of hazy IPA, because when people are drinking it, I think at least I know that they're in beer. If they're starting in beer, and that if that's where they start, at least it's beer. Whereas if I could be losing somebody to cocktails or seltzers or something that is not necessarily adjacent to something that they could grow into. So at least I'm happy that they're at least drinking beer, and even if it's a hazy IPA, I'll take it. Same as somebody who wants to come in here and look for something that tastes like Busch Light. If I can get them to drink beer and continue to drink beer, we're doing ourselves a service from that side.
Sure.
And I think that the progression is that, similar to why craft beer ever became something that was interesting to you and me, was because we were experiencing something that didn't exist. And the whole IPA craze is somewhat nostalgic as well as differentiating. I mean, back in the day, if you had a hazy IPA, it was almost a way of being able to see a visual example of something that craft beer wasn't making, or that big beer wasn't making. So the visual side, I do believe there's an attachment to it, but also just because of nuanced hop, I guess, of citrus and of aroma, things that you're getting out of, like when I think about the first time I had Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, right? Like your taste buds didn't necessarily know what to do.
Sure.
And I think that that's still a nostalgic feeling that people, I think, who swear to just drink IPAs, that's what they do. Our philosophy is that it doesn't matter if I have 8 or if I have 2 or 3, like I typically do, that those 2 or 3 they're not gonna not get it. They're not gonna decide to get another drink just because I don't have the variety. I don't subscribe to that many versions of a similar style. I like the idea that I have so much, not just variety for drinking, but also because of the food. There are certain things that I just know that will work with food, and things that have that are not going to be aggressively taking one from the other. So we like to stay in the lager, lighter ale, milds, and we do a lot of English styles. I think that tests the boundaries of most of what we like to do, with the idea, of course, that the more I guess some of the sours. I mean, we have a farmhouse sour that is slightly tart, then aged with gooseberries. I mean, it's like one of those types of beers that goes great with so many different foods, but by itself, if you taste it on its own, it's a little funky. But I don't know if that's generally if that type of appreciation goes into what people are really thinking about. And that's our goal, and that's our plan, is to continue to talk to people about, now taste this with what you're eating and tell me how much more that the flavors change, because
Sure.
it really does. And then obviously you talk about glassware, and we do, I think we have 8 different types of glassware that we serve everything in, mainly because of, that you're getting so much different defining qualities of our beer with the proper glassware and temperature.
One of the things, so we ran into each other at CBC in Philly, and Philly's such a great beer drinking town, and no matter what block you're walking down, mostly, you're going to find a place where you can pop in for a pint. And afterwards, we were talking a little bit over email of just, getting people who don't live in city areas into a brewery, into a place like yours. And I think we've sort of hit the 3 major themes of entertainment/music and beer and food. But what else have you seen as the challenges of a location like yours to get people coming through regularly? And then, like, how have you met them? Because, like, it seems like you have all of the necessary components there, and a setting like yours is fun to come to, and people should want to do it, but sometimes it can be just a little bit harder to get folks, that last mile, as it were.
Right. Yeah, well, especially when alcohol is involved and and nighttime driving and so on and so forth. I mean, we're definitely a day drinking kind of atmosphere where
It's my
we
language.
are, yeah, where people are out and about. They're at their tables, but they see somebody that they know from a town 60 miles away. I mean, that's not an uncommon thing for people to run into each other. Like how we haven't seen each other in 3 years, and we live in the same town that's in outside of Lancaster, but we see each other at Shiber. Um, that is a common thing, and I think that um, the it, going to I would say where we struggle and where we shine is in the idea that the expectation level of coming to rural Pennsylvania is, I mean, the bar is pretty low. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I mean, somebody's coming here and they generally are thinking, well, I've never really been through here. I'm driving through parts of the town and things kind of look a little weird. And they get to our place and it's almost like an oasis of sorts. And you know what? I guess one of the best compliments that people ever pay us is if they say that I never thought that I would come to Lewistown and feel like I was on vacation. And that's, I mean, that obviously is heartwarming and why we do what we do. I mean, those are the kinds of comments and those people who just are like, are overwhelmed. So I don't know if it's because of the expectation coming to the place. The second part of that is now those people tell their neighbors and their friends, oh my God, if you ever get up to this part, you got to go to Shaker. Oh, it's our favorite place in the world. You got to go. And then they get here, and then the bar is now set to a particular level that I don't know if we're necessarily hitting it. You know, it's now that we're into our ninth summer of being of the tap room being open, it is it's a constant thing that we're trying to recreate. And where do we stop? Right. I mean, I think that's the other part of this is we feel great about where we are right now, but there's still an evolution that still needs to happen. We can make better beer, we can make better food, we can make better entertainment and better spaces, right? We can be so much better, but at the same time, a lot of that also changes the consistency. And I think the reason why people go to places and why they go out to eat and why they go to their favorite third places is the consistency in addition to the quality. And if you change too much, or if you try to evolve in one particular direction over another, then are you changing your identity to your core people who love you for who you are, right? So that's, I guess that's the thing that over the last few years that we've really just kind of felt that we are right now, it's okay to continue to just do what we're doing without changing too much and actually seeing that morph into something that feels right, almost like a pair of jeans that you just keep wearing, and maybe they become passe at some point, but or maybe there's holes in the knees, but it's still something that feels right, and that exudes to the customer, I think.
So where do you want to put your focus going forward? You know, you've been thoughtful in all of your approaches. What's scratching around the back of your brain that you want to start putting some effort into as the
Yeah.
brewery evolves?
Well, clearly we want to continue to be a little bit more thoughtful of our distribution. Um, some of that is intentional. Right now, we don't do a whole lot of distribution because we want it to still be somewhat of a niche brand. I don't want it to be a ubiquitous thing that's on tap handles for the sake of being on a tap handle. There's I think there's a place for the growth and how you evolve it. I would like to be a little bit more centralized in certain towns, and I give everybody, whoever wants to put us on tap in their town, I want them to be the only one in a general area to have it, because that's part of the niche, and I think that's part of the, I wouldn't even call it the hypeness of it, because I don't even subscribe to the concept of that. It's more of, I want them to feel like there's a partnership, and that's part of what I want to continue to develop for places who put craft beer on a pedestal in their bar programs. And I would say that part, continuing the quality consciousness of what we're doing, and finding different ways, and tweaking different things with different things. I think that would, I know it sounds weird, but somewhat taking back changes that we've made for what would seem to be better choices, and almost rolling back some of our recipes back to some Brewery. We've done that with some of our beers recently, and they've really turned out so much better because of it. It's almost like specifically with ones that are late, or adjunct driven, where we feel like, oh, well, maybe we should add some fruit to it, or maybe we should add something of this nature. We should do this and do that. And next thing you know, it's like, it's almost like addition by subtraction. Get to more of a pure side of what it is that beer was supposed to be to begin with. And it's almost like, stop throwing so much at it. That's somewhat in what we've, and I don't know if that's just because of the environment that we're in, but it just feels like when things are not so refined, they tend to have more definition.
I
don't
like
know.
that. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, it's just like, it's like you go to these different places, and when we've traveled, and if you go to Hill Farmstead or Suarez and all these different places, and I think, well, they're in the same kind of boat as we are, but people go there in pilgrimages for beer, right? And for good reason. They're fantastic breweries. But I think what I'm trying to drive at is that there's not, just because, I mean, I some people give me shit because I lead with food stuff on social media, and I'm not leading with beer stuff. But going back to my point is that the food stuff is what is what has the wheels.
Yeah. Again, look at that late 90s playbook. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's really what I'm going with. I mean, I'm really going with kind of like what set, the Iron Hills and similar in the BJ's of the far past, like what set them into a course of being able to believe that this was a neighborhood driven thing, and it is the food. So that's kind of why I do it. I did try to kind of divide church and state, with my Instagram being more beer focused, and Facebook being more food driven, but I've pretty much given up on having two different identities for it. It's pretty much
that sounds exhausting. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. But it's very similar to Rusty Rail locally. They did something for Mifflinburg that didn't necessarily, no one would have believed. I mean, that was like their transformation of a small Pennsylvania community into a place that was a destination was awe-inspiring for us. And we don't have nearly the space that they have, but we have the same concept of, once you're here, to feel like, it's almost sometimes a problem that we got to get people out. We got to move. We got to get new people in those seats. So, it's a good problem. But sometimes you feel like we could always evolve ourselves into something that does run a little bit more efficiently. but without it feeling like a restaurant or feeling like a diner. I don't want that. I want people to feel like this is something that they can live in, um, and that breathing in and out of a place, and you can see it on the body language of somebody walking in and what it looks like when they walk out. It's a completely different, how anxious they were when they got there to how happy and just things are like there's not a worry in the world. And that's if we're doing that, then I feel we've been successful.
Give people all the particulars of where you are and where to find you online, because you've painted this good picture, and now we should be getting people walking through your door.
That'd be fantastic. So shybearbrewing.com, just as it sounds, SHYBEAR Brewing. We're Lewistown is our main location. We do have a tap room in Hershey inside of their Hershey Fresh Market, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. So you can find us down there if you're not willing to get the full experience in Lewistown. And like I said, you'll find us at select places, but we do list the places that we are on tap on our Facebook or on our website. You'll be able to see "Find Us in the Wild" is the heading of where you can find us on tap in other places.
Okay. Well, then before I let you go, I want to ask you the green door question. Being that if this conversation ended and you could walk through a green door and be at any pub or any brewery anywhere in the world, where would you want to go? Who would you want to be with? And what would you like to be drinking?
Well, I had some time to think about this, and knowing that I've listened to your show many times, I can't help but think that I would want to be at Cantillon with my wife, because I feel like even though if I could choose anybody in history, when it comes down to being at ease and feeling like if you're going to be experiencing something of that nature, I would definitely want to be with somebody that would appreciate it and that would feel as welcome to the experience as I. So I would definitely say being at Cantillon and drinking one of their gooses of a fantastic blend. That would be what she and I would be doing for sure.
There's no wrong answers, but that's a great answer.
I was thinking about it. I was thinking, where would it be? Where would it be for sure?
Yeah. Jason, thanks for taking the time for sharing the insights. I'm full disclosure, I haven't been, so now I'm even more excited about going. So thanks for
anytime.
Thanks for sharing the insight.
You bet. I appreciate it, John. I hope to see you soon.
My thanks to Jason. Who are some brewers that you want to hear from? Drop me a line. Let me know on email. It's johnholl@allaboutbeer.com. That's JOHNHOLL @allaboutbeer.com. If you're in Boston this weekend, I hope to see you at Notch Brewing for the Forever Lager Festival on June 6th. And a quick reminder to raise your glass to a one-of-a-kind Adirondack getaway. Blackfly Beer Camp is happening June 26th to 28th, and it brings together professional brewers, passionate home brewers, and craft beer enthusiasts for a weekend filled with flavor, fun, and fireside camaraderie, all set against the backdrop of Great Camp Sagamore's legendary wilderness retreat. Spend 3 unforgettable days immersing yourself in the art, science, and joy of brewing. Enjoy thoughtfully paired meals, hands-on learning, spirited entertainment, and plenty of opportunities to taste and talk beer with some of the region's finest makers. If you're a seasoned brewer or simply love a good pint, this weekend offers something for every palate. Spots are limited. Reserve your experience now at sagamore.org, and I hope to see you there. Because the brewers are making a Rauch beer for this. And if you love smoked beers, This Week in Rauch Beer is the group on Facebook that you should follow, or go to @TWRauchBeer on Instagram, upload your smoky photos, join the conversation. You can support us by visiting allaboutbeer.com/support. And when you're at the website, you can read our articles as well as the archives and follow links for All About Beer's social media pages. As promised, I'm back to Dan Canary, the co-founder of Harpoon Brewery, which is part of Barrel One Collective, where he is also the co-founder and the president of that collective. The company is a sponsor of this episode. Dan, at the top of the show, we were talking about how things have changed. We were talking about Harpoon IPA, Harpoon Ale. I think there's a lot of people who are excited about the brewery. People like celebrating milestones. What are you all doing to celebrate?
Gosh, we have a lot. Rob Day and his team have put together an amazing month of celebrations, highlighted by the actual date itself, June 19th, I think it is, which happens to be right around, maybe it is Father's Day, or right before Father's Day.
It is that weekend, yeah. Yeah,
we've got a 4-day celebration planned on the first date, I think the 18th, that Thursday night. It's our actual anniversary, and our theme is Love Beer. Really the motto or tagline for Harpoon for 30 years has been Love Beer, Love Life. And it just reflects who we are, how we approach what we do, our belief that beer is a product to bring people together and part of a really active, fun lifestyle. So that night is all about beer and its origins. Day 2 is a Love Life night, celebrating community, bringing a lot of retailers, our wholesale partners. We've had wholesalers now for almost our full 40 years. So we want to celebrate with the folks that help get us here, including you, by the way, John, which we're very excited about.
I'll be there.
Wonderful. And day 3 is Firsts Are Forever. We just have such a great history of firsts, mostly because we've just been around so long. And so we have a DJ, and we're going to be spinning, songs every hour from different decades, the 80s, 90s, etc. So that's just going to be a real celebration. And then day 4, of course, is Father's Day. And we're going to be focusing on dad jokes and just having an awful lot of celebrating all the wonderful dads out there who'd love to drink an IPA on a regular basis.
I love that. So you've been reflecting a lot on the last 40 years of what Harpoon has been and what it's meant to folks. Do you have any idea what the next 40 years might have in store?
It seems to me, John, we've gone through various phases in the industry, right? We went through an explosive growth period, really from 2010 to 2020. The number of brews exploded for a variety of reasons that we can discuss in more detail later. But now we seem to be more in this consolidation phase, as I like to think about it, where there's a positive. I don't necessarily love the word shakeout because it implies people going away. I don't necessarily think that will happen. But there'll be a win-win and a increased focus where brands will have to stand for various things, and there's have to be clarity in the marketplace, which I think is good and overdue. And I think coming out of that, we're going to have a really healthy, vibrant, beer business and beer culture in the United States, which I think is incredibly exciting. I can't wait to watch it all unfold.
I love that. I'm excited to watch it unfold as well. Congratulations on the milestone. It is really cool to have Harpoon around for as long as it has and all that it's inspired. I'm thankful also for the company's support in sponsoring this episode. And I'm going to remind everybody that if you want to read more about what Dan was just talking about for that 40th anniversary weekend coming up later on in June, you can go to harpoonbrewery.com. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, John. I look forward to seeing it later this month.
If you like listening to beer podcasts, a reminder, All About Beer has a separate podcast channel. Just search and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, where you can listen to shows like Brewer to Brewer, which is a weekly show, the All About Beer podcast with M. Sauter and Don Tess, and One Iconic Beer with Jeff Allworth. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday. The BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. And as for this show, Nate Schweber, he does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Holl. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.